Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, what a beautiful, I think, way to spend a Saturday morning, which with, all the flowers in the room. I saw one thorn earlier on, sitting on the other side. Yeah, so it's really great, I think, to be here this morning. And I also know, how tempting it would have been, given the cold to stay wrapped in blankets today. So I really want to honor the decision that you made to be here. I don't take it for granted from my side, particularly because I know that, the choice, says something powerful about you. And also that you are a leader who is still choosing to grow, even when it's uncomfortable. Because actually, that's when growth take place, when it's actually uncomfortable, more than when it's comfortable. So I'd like to ask you a question. And the question from my side is, have you ever sat in a boardroom and asked yourself, is this sustainable? Not just, the business, but the way you lead, the decisions you make, and also the way you show up as an individual. So today I really want to speak about exactly that, how we build leadership that lasts, particularly as women. For me, that's relevant, whether you are a board member, whether you're an executive or running your own business, because sustainability is not just about climate. I mean, having been in sustainability, I realize a lot of people think sustainability is about climate. In my mind, it's clear. It's about how we carry ourselves, our people, and even our values, particularly in pressure-filled rooms, in boardrooms. So as someone who spent years navigating executive leadership, inside complex institutions, including, my current role at ABSA, I've come to learn that real leadership isn't about perfection. It's about integrity. Madame Louise spoke a lot about integrity. I always tell people or remind people, and also myself in particular, that integrity is the only currency that we have. And so we have to protect it at all costs when given the opportunity to do so. So it's also about impact. And it's also about staying true to your values, even when the room gets quiet. You have to stay true to your own values. So in our time together, I want to reflect on how we lead through change, how we sustain ourselves while carrying others, and also how we ask the right questions at the boardroom table, even when they are uncomfortable. Because transformation only happens when it's uncomfortable, like I said earlier on. So we've got to be comfortable in our own skins to ask even the most difficult questions. So it's also, I think, a privilege, to share today's platform with Madame Louisa, a leader I respect deeply as a board member, at ABSA Group, and someone I've had the honor of engaging with, from inside the organization. I truly believe she brings wisdom, clarity, and conviction to every space that she's in. I've learned a lot simply by observing how she holds the room. And I think this morning was also testament to really how she holds the room and how she holds the line, because she can truly hold the line. Sometimes when I see her hand up on Teams, I shout her. I know it was a picture coming. But I know also it comes from a good place, so that's where I take comfort from. So I think on that note, I really would like to begin today with a quote that has stayed with me, in particular, as I was thinking about, the presentation this morning. And it's from the book, Leadership and the New Science by Margaret Whitley, a woman whose work redefined how, we think about systems, how we think about people, and also how we think about leadership on the back of that. So that quote says the leaders we need today are those who are willing to be present, to be curious, and to lead from a place of humility and connection. So that speaks deeply to me, because in a world that's often loud, that's fast, and in particular, that's performative, full of theatrics, what we need is actually presence. Madame spoke about, how you differentiate yourself. You can differentiate yourself just by being present. So we need connection as people, and we also need leadership that lasts, not just leadership, that performs. So that's why I'm here today to speak about perfection, or not to speak about, perfection, but, or, performance or titles. And I heard, Madam, it also, came up a lot, from your speech, the issue of titles. But I think I want us to speak about sustainable leadership, the kind that holds particularly under pressure, and the kind that brings others along, the kind that lets you sleep at night. There is nothing that is as beautiful as having a good night's sleep. There are times when, you sit in organizations and you can see that people are anxious, but you go to sleep knowing that I've done everything right because I was who I was, and I've not sold my soul in the process. So like many of you, I've spent time around the boardroom tables also where I've had to work twice as hard, to be heard, particularly because some of us, are said to be quiet and have, low volume voices. But I think for me, where I've been the only woman, I think, or also the only Black person, or sometimes a combination of both, where I've had to lead through uncertainty, lead through egos, politics, and pressure. But I think what I need you to take away from this is that for me, what I also learned, and I say this with a smile, is that the hardest part about changing how we lead isn't the change itself. It's realizing that you had bad habits yourself in the first place. So for the longest time, I thought, for example, I was highly collaborative. But looking back, I was just being overly accommodating in instances with very good manners on the back of that. So yes, the shift does take a conscious effort, but also sometimes a bit of unlearning some of your own habits too, and recognizing that your own habits also contribute to the politics. They contribute to the pressure of other people, and they contribute to egos. It saddened me last night to talk to someone, and they were telling me about the lady who has passed away because of the pressures that she had from work. And those were pressures that were coming from her own leaders. And this is a person that sacrificed, their life for over 25 years working for the same company. And they ended up, passing away from colon cancer because of the pressure they were experiencing. So it's important for us as leaders to continuously reflect on how are we and our actions are also impacting on others. So, and over time, I've also learned that sustainable leadership isn't about always getting it right. It's about leading in a way that doesn't drain the soul out of you in particular, or the souls of the people that you lead. Because, when you break someone's soul, you're just the same as a murderer. You can't take away from people. You need to be giving more from people. That's why we are here in this world, to give more than what we take away, from others. So when we hear sustainability, we often think, of the environment, which is ESG, or, some corporate report that no one reads until the next AGM. But some of us spend hours and hours trying to make them beautiful. But I want to reframe, that today. And for me, sustainability is about leadership that can hold hold the pressure, hold purpose, hold people without breaking, burning out, or even betraying its values. So it's about building boards, businesses, and systems that don't collapse when a CEO leaves or when the media turns. It is also about asking, can the way I'm leading today still, work 5 years from now without hurting people or hurting myself in the process? If the answer is no, then you know that something needs to shift. And you can only get there through doing personal reflections and reflecting in honest and in earnest with yourself. People will never tell you. I think Madame said you need to, the biggest job that you have or task that we have as leaders is to look within, because you always have to constantly challenging yourself, because normally we tend to think that we are better than the other, but we also have our own flaws. So I'll start, by bringing it home with a story. So some years ago, I joined a board that looked incredible on paper. Big brand, great results, strong governance. But once I got in, I realized that everything was held together by tension, not trust. The leaders were exhausted. Decisions were rushed. Nobody was really listening. Everyone was just defending their own turf. It hit me that, you can be fully compliant, but still completely unsustainable. So that experience shaped how I approach leadership today. I stopped chasing perfection because I fully understand that this is a journey, and a journey is not about perfection. And now I've started to ask better questions. And those questions center around who's in the room, who's carrying the emotional load in the room, and who's being heard, who's being overlooked. Because ticking boxes doesn't build resilience. Connections and clarity do on the back of that. So when I speak to leaders about sustainability, I always come back to 3 anchors, and they are not complicated for that matter, because we tend to think that these things are complicated. They are not. The first one is purpose. So if a board can't answer why it exists beyond making money, it's going to struggle when things get hard. Purpose gives direction when strategy gets messy. And we all know strategy can get really messy. The second one is people. Who gets to lead? Who gets developed? And who gets the credit? Too often we talk about transformation, but don't change power structures. Sustainable leadership listens to people who don't shout, and also brings those at the margins into the middle. So you have to ask yourself, if I'm in that boardroom, to what extent am I bringing those that are in the margins to the fore? Because normally the great answers come from those that sit in the margins or those that do not shout the loudest. So the last one is around principles. And these for me are the non-negotiables. What will we never do as people, no matter how attractive the shortcut looks? Madam, you've said it. What will we never do, no matter how attractive the shortcut looks? In difficult boardrooms, it's not the policies that save you at the end of the day, it's the principles that you hold as an individual. So in case you're wondering, what this looks like practically, Here are the questions I ask in most boardrooms that I serve on. What is the long-term cost of this decision? And cost is not about money only. It also includes emotions. What is the long-term cost of this decision? Are we managing reputation, or are we doing the right thing? Because those are two completely different things. Are we managing reputation or doing the right thing? And whose voices are missing in this conversation? It comes back to the issue of listening. Do our leadership choices reflect the future or protect the past? Because sometimes the past, yes, teaches us, what we need to do differently in future. But if we don't ask the question if our leadership choices reflect the future, we'll stay stuck in a dark past in some instances. So for me, these aren't soft questions. They are truly strategic questions, and asking them is leadership. And you all should know them and ask them more and more frequently, because the answers that you come to are the ones that actually transform organizations. So now I just want to maybe take you to, the reality of what's not being spoken about in most instances. And that's the emotional labor that women in leadership carry. We prepare twice as much. We mentor teams while managing crises. We're chatting with some of the ladies earlier on during the break in terms of, how sometimes we're expected to behave in schizophrenic ways, where you're in the office, you must be, this stellar boss. You get home, you must be this submissive mom, So we absorb tension. We play peacekeepers and then get told to smile more and tone it down and don't be emotional. If you want to be emotional, you need to be emotional and own it. It's important. So let me say this clearly then. Leadership that sacrifices your well-being is not sustainable. Leadership that costs you your voice is too expensive. You need to reconsider your choices. We need to stop modeling resilience as carrying everything silently. Sustainable leaders set boundaries and build support, not just strategies. So I urge you then, that as leaders and also as women, continuously reflect, find moments to journal, as well, because those are the moments where you can honestly talk to yourself and think about ways of how to reshape your own thinking at that point in time. So research, I think when you look at it, keeps showing, that many of us already know women are more likely to lead with empathy and with compassion. They are also more likely to focus on long-term impact. And finally, more likely to raise ethical concerns early. And I want to remind you, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. We are not here to lean into broken systems. We are here to change how leadership works for everyone. And that's why spaces like Women on Board and sessions that we're having today, they matter, because they remind us that we are not guests at the table, we are architects of the future. So our continent is full of complex as well as beautiful contradictions. We live in environments where resources are stretched, regulation is tight, and trust in most of our institutions is very fragile. Our continent, is a complex continent. That's why our kind of leadership, practical, inclusive, human, is exactly what's needed. So let's stop importing definitions of success from the West and start creating definition of success from our very own continent. Let's define what sustainable leadership looks like in the context of African boardrooms, in our own language, and also in our own way. I was actually amazed. I didn't think that, the session this morning was going to be as interesting as it was. And I was wishing that, I wish we could have more of such sessions in our own boardrooms, because we suffer, particularly in corporates, from artificial harmony. Artificial harmony is the killer of organizations. And it's not sustainable because it's performative at its best. So as I wrap then, I want to leave you with this. Think about your current leadership role, whether it's in a boardroom, a business, or your community. Ask yourself, what am I tolerating that's not aligned with my own values? What conversations am I avoiding as a person? And what's the one thing I can shift starting next week to lead more sustainably? You don't need to overhaul everything overnight. Change comes in small bits and pieces, but when you look back, you can see the amount of transformation that has happened because of the small moves that you've taken. So if we each commit to one shift, this room alone, excluding even those that are online, can ripple across dozens of companies, dozens of boards, as well as dozens of teams. So thank you, I think, for letting me be part of this incredible space. I don't take it lightly. We need more perfect leaders. So we don't need more perfect leaders on the back of that. We need more present, purposeful, and principled ones. And I believe that what's sitting in this room here today is exactly that. So I'll leave you with the words of Dr. Mampele Rampele, who said, "We are all leaders. We have been given the gift of life. Our challenge is to live lives that matter, live lives that make a difference, ultimately." So for me, this is a call to lead in a way that matters, to build boards and businesses that just don't succeed, but sustain, to make decisions that echo beyond the meeting and shape the future of those who come after us. So let's build boards and legacies that lasts on the back of that. So thank you. I'd like to open now the space for any thoughts.
But you're burning up the platform. It's burning. What an incredible, short and punchy message. Punki, I don't even know. Like, I've got goosebumps right now. Like, so many things are going through my mind. So we're going to open it up. I think, just to be fair, let's start with the questions online. I see they're loving it. I think the first comment comes from Agnes. She says, how do you handle polycrisis at the same time try to be emotionally stable as a leader? I'm going to learn that term. I didn't know. What is a polycrisis?
It's multiple crises.
Ah, okay. The word poly, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's all about being authentic, to yourself. And the most important thing is to have a strategy and stay the course. I always say to people, when you have a vision for yourself and you've got a strategy to support that vision, it actually carries you miles because you don't get flustered by what happens around you. So to make it simple, in the morning when you wake up, you have to go to the office and you know the route that you take every day to get to the office. Okay. And then the one morning there's traffic. What do you do? And it's going to take you 5 hours to sit on the road, same route that you take. You're going to take an alternate route. So you always have to have ways of thinking differently about what the solutions are when you encounter challenges. Madame said something interesting, ask for help also, because we are not we don't have solutions to all the problems, you know. And one of my greatest mottos that I carry with me in that is that it takes a village to raise a child. And that means you can always go anywhere in the village and seek help because the village will be there to help you.
Brilliant.
So that's how I self-sustain.
Brilliant.
Okay.
I just want to mention here that we have the Village of Women on Boards, and this village is available to everybody, not only women, but men as well. Everyone is welcome. We've set up this platform to create this space, to get help, to get inspired, to share. So I just want to encourage every one of you that are online, every one of you that are here, there is an answer. You should never, ever feel, I think it's very easy to just say, oh, well, there's no this and this, but we're offering this space right now. It's available. Next, we've got quite a few questions in the room. Just to be fair, who was first? Okay, yeah, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much, Modise, for that enlightening chat. You spoke about women being architects of the future. And what came to my mind was, maybe in your own opinion, what are the inhibitors basically of us as women growing, you know, and what's the system like, and how can we as women intentionally break whatever those barriers are that you have identified in your journey? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. My response to that is that, and you've used a nice word, which I will steal, intentionality. You know, you need to start small with intent. You know, to a large extent, join mentorship circles, because those mentorship circles, they help enlighten you and enrich you also as a person. Also find ways to shadow people you admire, because there's a reason why you're actually admiring, you know, that person. So develop your own voice before you are in the room. And remember, confidence grows through exposure. So you don't have to wait to be perfect. You just need to be prepared. You just need to be present. I spoke a little bit earlier on around the importance of presence in the book, that I quoted earlier. I think what I found profound is that at best of times as ladies, we tend to maybe struggle with this notion of work-life balance. And, you know, how I came around that idea was just understanding the importance of presence. Because if we are fully present in the space where you find yourself, you actually take away a lot. And you actually feel a lot more at ease, because work-life balance and all those nice goodies, they actually are fallacies, because there is no such thing. But make sure when you are with your kids, if they say, Mommy, let's play football, go play football. Be present for them, because that matters. That's the thing that they will remember about you. You know, when you go to funerals, you hear people say, my mom was a hero, because of the small things, not because of, you know, the big monies that you gave them. It was quite fascinating also. I'm just going to share this quickly. You know, I went to, you know, a funeral of one of, you know, senior execs, a guy who's like very well connected and wealthy. And, you know, what touched me when her daughter spoke, and she said, you know, when I asked my dad for money for facials, my dad says, sunlight and Vaseline, my baby does the work as well. You know, for her to remember her dad for that. And she cried after that, you know, that's a value that she took from dad, that sometimes we take the small things that matter the most for granted. So thanks for that question.
Okay, we've got, yes, okay, go ahead. I think we're going to take a question there, and then Yashmita can come next.
Thank you. Morning, Punki. I hope you guys can hear me. I've got two questions. The first one is on sustainable leadership, right? So I think we've seen over, let's say, the last 2 years, where there've been changes in leadership that have resulted in changes in strategy, right? And that in the instance where it's the same board and the same ESCO team, save for, let's say, the CEO. So what does that mean? Does that mean then, in that context, where's the sustainability? Or is it a sole decision, right? And my follow-up question is then, in an environment where the decision maker is the loudest in the room, right? And they're also the first to give their view. How do you raise a differing view without killing your career altogether? Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, that's a brilliant question. Let me start with your second question, and then I'll go to the strategy question. I think your second question is pertinent. I think it cuts to the issue of honesty and integrity and the matter of shortcuts, that we discussed. You have to ask yourself, am I willing to sacrifice myself? Am I not robbing the organization, by not challenging the status quo? Because you're there for that reason. You're not there to be agreeable or to follow, what everyone else is saying. Yes, at the end of the day, when different voices are heard, they enhance the ultimate outcome. And you've got to appreciate that. So where I personally take comfort from is when I was in the room, did I say everything that I wanted to say? And when I leave that room, have I said everything I needed to have said? That's where I take comfort from. Yes, sometimes it comes at a personal risk. And who cares? If it's a principled choice, that you have made. And yes, sometimes it's tough. I mean, we hear these, people that whistleblow and they end up almost losing their own lives. But it's a personal choice that you make as to what extent do you want to sacrifice your own principles and values. And so for me, it comes back really to that. So you cannot, because the flip side of you keeping quiet is you denying others the opportunity to come in and weigh in on, what you have said. Because sometimes it happens that, 10 people in the room are quiet, but they are all thinking like you. And then, that moment when you say that, you actually spark, the room into a completely different direction. And it happens in most instances. So never leave spaces without having said what needed to have been said, because that's how you can sleep at night. Rather, you sleep at night than allowing, things that do not go with your own, moral values, or moral compass. So for me, that's important. And then the second question on the strategy, I think we shouldn't confuse an agenda, like a CEO, say, agenda, and an organization strategy. So when a CEO is put in place, they are put in place to move forward the agenda of the organization. But they also have to have their own footprints or fingerprints, into how that agenda is driven. Because if the agenda does not marry with their own personal agendas, then it becomes hard because they must also come to work and feel like they're making a difference. And for you to make a difference, your own values need to marry with that of the organization. And in my mind is if a board selects you as a CEO or selects a CEO, they go through a very rigorous process of understanding if that person buys into the strategy and then how their own agenda aligns with the strategy. So when things change, it's not that the long-term strategy of the organization is shifting. It's merely because the priorities at a given point in time, given the context, are different. And so strategy, you always have to remember, happens within a context. It doesn't happen in its own. And priorities get chosen every year as to these are the things that matter the most at this point in time, based on where we are at as an organization. And that's where the focus goes. It's not that your overarching long-term strategy has shifted. So I think it's important for people to understand, that difference. And yes, there are times, when life happens, and people are not able to effectively articulate themselves that this is actually what we are trying to achieve. And then you end up finding, CEOs have to part maybe with boards. But at best of times, it's caused by by communication, ineffective, I would say communication rather than effective communication. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take one question from Yashmita, and there's another one with the roaming mic. There's another one, maybe while we're getting that sorted, there's a question online from Neo. She says, thank you, Modise. What ways have you implemented to disrupt artificial harmony in boardrooms and the workplace, particularly in instances where teams insist on working in silos and yet joint solutions are expected from them?
I think, yeah, thanks. That's a great question, and also a fair one. Artificial harmony, you challenge it or you target it by asking a question such as, have we said everything that needed to have been said? Are we sure, all of us here in the room, that the solution that we are putting in on the table is the best solution for the company at this point in time? So it's really taking a step back and challenging the decision, but also, especially in organizations, I mean, there's, I think, various, governance, and oversight that takes place. And the oversight is also there to try and identify instances where there's artificial harmony. But, one other concept that I have learned also is that there's a concept of a no veto. So use your no veto. When something makes you feel uncomfortable, and from my side, I mean, I have used my no veto. But also having the ability to listen to everyone else. Because sometimes your no veto doesn't make sense, but in other instances, it does make sense, particularly when it comes to issues of innovation. If you want to innovate, you can't go business as usual. You've got to then be able to carry a no veto, particularly when it's in your space of expertise. Yes, you have to listen to everyone, but you must exercise your no veto on the back of that. So for me, it comes back to listening effectively, but ultimately also being able to share your own voice in a professional and respectful way. If you're going to say things to people in a manner that's, disrespectful, even if the points that you're making are the greatest points in the room, no one's going to listen to you. So you've got to think also about how you land your messages. That doesn't mean that you must be, I would say, too diplomatic to a point that people don't even understand what you're trying to say. Be direct, be clear, don't be diplomatic, but say what needs to be said.
So we're going to take the two questions in the room and then we'll wrap up. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much for your words of wisdom. I just wanted to check your thoughts or pearls of wisdom on, I think, most of our arch nemesis, which is imposter syndrome, right? I think if I reflect on my own career, there's been a few times in my career and, where I felt like, okay, am I the right person for this job? Or would this organization not benefit from somebody else? And I find like, if I reflect back, I look at the times when I did feel like that, those were the times where there were major changes in the organizations or polycrises, as somebody mentioned. And somehow, I was fortunate that I was able to pick myself up and continue. So I guess the question for you is that, what are some of the daily routine tips that you should be implementing so that you don't get there, firstly? And at what point do you need to step back? And so what are the warning signs to say that actually it's time for you to step away and let somebody else take over? Because I think it's always that fine balance, because you tend to get accused of wanting to throw in the towel or you're not ready, but actually you questioning if you being here is actually in the best interest of that organization. So I just wanted to get a sense of, what metrics do you use to take those decisions?
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for that question. I think for me, the most important thing is self-awareness, and also understanding your own limits, as a person. And if you get to a point where you say enough is enough, then enough is enough. But what I find is helpful is, from a self-awareness point of view, there's really, 4 things, that work for me. First and foremost is conviction and faith. Okay. And it's faith also from a spirituality perspective. How often do you connect with yourself at that level? Because that is the thing that ultimately guides you as to whether what you're doing is right or what you're doing is wrong or doesn't make sense for you. So faith, very important capital, which I tap into on a daily basis. So I find my quiet spaces and really use them productively to nurture my own soul, because no one will nurture your soul except for you. So the second thing becomes, understanding the worth, I think, that you are bringing, how you think, and how your ability to think impacts on others, and be very conscious and mindful of that. You can't be in a room full of people who are non-bankers, as an example, and then start talking about RWAs.
Yeah.
You've lost the room.
Yeah.
So stay away, be simple. Think simple, make things simple for people. People will love you to bits. So embrace your own intellectual capacity, but also embrace the rooms that you find yourself in. And so the third piece is about tapping into your own heart, your own feelings. We've got hearts for a reason, and we must take care of them. But also we must understand that hearts have got the capacity to take joy and also the capacity to take sadness. And you must know in what place is your heart. Most of the time, if your heart, is at a place of sadness, then it's time for you to nurture yourself, because you have to be strong, for yourself, but also for your family. And most so us, I think, as women, we've got kids, that need us. And so you've got to take care of your own heart. And then finally, it's your gut. Trust your gut. We've all been given intuition for a reason, and we must trust it. So really, I always tap into those 4 capitals, I call them. But the most important one, is the faith, which is something that in organizations, normally we don't talk about. We talk about the heart, the mind, and, like the gut or the soul. But it's important to really have something bigger than yourself that continuously is telling you enough, and listen to it. It's not self-doubt. Sometimes we think it's self-doubt, but it's not self-doubt. And we've got to be comfortable. But the one big thing that I do also personally for myself is to journal, because that's the time when I talk to myself. And that's the time when I can say, actually, here you're missing the track, or here you're on the right track. So yeah, those are some of the things I can say.
Question at the back, and then we can wrap up.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It's a learning curve. I'm not even closer to selling my house, but it's a learning curve for me. From the ground, like really like working on the ground, I would like to know more to say that, like in the boardroom, maybe from the first boardroom that we're like being selling in there, of where like I would think that there were like only few like female like people in the room. How was it? Because I think it's a normal now that like there are more women that are coming to join in the boardroom, but in the past it was like to say that they could like just point you to say that they see. And in saying that, like to say that the decision, the contribution that you made, that you can also look back to say that from where I started, my contribution, this is what like has been changed, that like made maybe space for the women, and also how you have done it, because it is difficult. I am fully aware that there are like a room full of women that are representing us. But with the results that from where I am, I would say it sounds as if like nothing has actually been done. So the contribution, the impact that has been like, you have seen in that meeting, hoping that I will be able to pick up something to know to say that from here, where to go to be able to learn and grow. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was a mouthful. So I'll try and discern, some of what you've been asking, but it's very important, I think, questions that you're asking. So, you know what? I said we grow when it's uncomfortable. Okay, so when I started in my role in ABSA as the CFO, I was the only female in the boardroom and Black, and I was in Pretoria. Okay. And the language that was mostly spoken was the language of Afrikaans. Okay. Which meant that I was paddling against the sea. But I did not let that fluster me, because I knew what I was bringing into that room at that moment. And part of it was to transform that organization. And there were moments where, so when I came in, I worked with someone, and this person was competing for the same role that I got. And the guy was nasty, to say the least, because now he had to report into me. And it didn't make my life easy at all. But the comfort I took was wisdom that I got from my grandmother. Sometimes when these things happen, you don't know why they happen, but my grandmother used to say, every elephant must carry its own tusk.
Right.
Every elephant must carry its own trunk. So don't carry other people's problems. They are not yours. So what I'm saying that what was helpful in that for me was that the moment came one day where I felt, I guess I knew. But I to, lower myself to the level where this person was. I called him into a boardroom and set up an hour meeting. We went into the boardroom and I said to him, I just wanted to tell you something, that you are a smart person, you are intelligent, but also you are your own worst enemy. Thank you. That was the end of the meeting. And he looks at me, he's like, what do you mean? I said, thank you. The meeting is done. And I left the room. And that was the end of the meeting. I tell you, 2-3 years later, the guy came to me crying and saying, you're a phenomenal woman. Says that moment was a moment of change for him. He had to go and reflect. And he said, sorry, he wants to apologize. And I asked him, what are you apologizing for? He said everything he wanted to say. And I said, listen, I never carried any of those issues with me. But I'm glad that you found yourself. And you was telling me that now he's a born-again Christian. And I said, I'm also glad that you have found the Lord.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, it's hard sometimes because we want to allow our own egos maybe to run ahead of us. Always check yourself, am I carrying another person's issues or am I dealing with me? Because we all have our own burdens, and we can't be, encumbered by other people's burdens. So how I then live from then on is one thing I fully appreciate and understand is that people project themselves onto you. So you have a choice as to whether you want to own that or you want to help them, to release their energy. Because sometimes we are there more as energy releasers. Prayer doesn't happen through people kneeling and, closing their eyes. Sometimes it's just someone, trying to release the energy and the steam that they are sitting with internally. And you don't have to respond to that. All you need to do on the back of that is, how can I help you? So how are you there to listen when it counts the most? And today I can tell you that we are good buddies with that guy. So yeah, we've made peace. So I think for me, it's important, colleagues, that you understand yourself and also be comfortable with who you are, because we are in this world to make a difference. We were not brought into this world to be who we are not. We are brought into this world to make a difference in our own right, and we must never forget that. Maybe one last pearl of wisdom from my grandmother. She used to tell me that we all have a hand, and when you look at your hand, it has 5 fingers, and all 5 of them are different, and that is diversity. And if the one finger doesn't work, the others might still be able to work, but we are not optimum. So in essence is embrace, those that are around you. And also, be grateful to have the people around you, because you become more effective as human beings just by embracing those that are around you. And in boardrooms, there are points in time where there's certain battles that you are not going to win. You must look for the war and say, which is the war that I'm going to fight? Because that is where I'm going to make the biggest difference. Sometimes we get lost in distractions. And so focus is very important. Thanks.
Wow. So I'm just going to keep it really short. Ladies, I want to thank you. I want to honor you for taking time to invest. I think the platform is also burning up. Everyone's really happy. And I'm sure they all experienced what we have experienced. This space is for you. I want to emphasize that. I know Saturdays are difficult. We've got an online option. We've even got a YouTube live feed as well. We put content on our page. There's videos from previous presenters, etc. There's a book coming. I just don't want us to ever look back and say, we didn't make it because we didn't have. I think there's a lot of other initiatives going on. But I really just want to encourage you. We've been so blessed to attract such incredible people. I wake up every morning and I say, wow. And so I celebrate you. Sorry for the people online. We're a little bit over time. I think sometimes it's difficult because we let the conversations run as they should. So thank you for joining. We look forward to you joining us for the next sessions. For us who are here, we're being treated to a very nice lunch. So thank you so much. We'll see you again next month. Thank you.